Ms. Hahn? You're on.
Again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk, and I'm asking unanimous consent that the amendment be considered as read.
Without objection, so ordered. The clerk will designate the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to my colleague, Congressman Larson, for joining me in offering this amendment. One of the most somber responsibilities this committee has is to hold hearings on devastating and often deadly accidents and that sometimes occur in the process of transporting goods, people, and the natural resources we all rely on. Although sad, they are necessary because they provide us with the insight we need in order to improve safety and provide justice for the victims. Last month, almost 6 years after the San Bruno, California explosion that took the lives of 8 people, Congresswoman Jackie Speer testified once more before this committee about her frustration with the federal government's inability to hold everyone directly involved with this tragedy accountable. In my own congressional district, it's unclear as to whether anyone can be held accountable for an oil spill that happened in the neighborhood of Wilmington. These incidents are not isolated to California. There have been thousands of pipeline incidents over the last 20 years. However, federal charges have only been brought 4 times since 1996. This is because in order for a pipeline operator to be prosecuted, they must be found to have acted knowingly and willfully. And according to the Inspector General of the Department of Transportation, this standard is a significant obstacle to bringing more successful prosecutions. Last month, he stated that the standard should be changed to include recklessly. The amendment Congresswoman Larson and I are offering today would take the Inspector General's recommendation and change the standard for a criminal liability for pipeline operators to include acting recklessly. For years, pipeline operators have not made safety a priority and have been able to sometimes walk away from destructive and deadly pipeline accidents by just paying administrative fines. Representative Speer, Larson, and I agree with the Inspector General. Fines have become nothing more than the cost of doing business for these companies. The possibility of criminal prosecution would make the safety of our communities a priority and allow the federal government to better enforce pipeline safety law. We already prosecute other types of reckless behavior in order to incentivize safety. In 1996, a Value Jet airplane took the lives of 110 people when it exploded because of improperly stored cargo. No federal criminal charges could be filed because at the time, the standard for prosecution in the transportation of hazardous materials was also knowingly and willfully. The clear injustice of the situation resulted in the law being amended to include recklessly in 2005. My amendment would merely mirror this change in pipeline safety law. We shouldn't wait for another accident with mass casualties in order for us to act. I understand that accidents sometimes happen and for whatever reason cannot be prevented, and my amendment reflects this reality. Therefore, any companies making good faith efforts to comply with the law should not worry about facing criminal changes. I hope that I can count on everyone's support for this amendment. By doing so, we'd be implementing a recommendation by the DOT's very own Inspector General. We'd be mirroring what is already done for safety in the transportation of hazardous materials and provide our constituents with the peace of mind that we're looking out for them and we will work to bring them justice. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. Unfortunately, I must oppose this amendment. The use of reckless as a standard in pipeline safety I don't believe is needed. Reckless is subjective. It looks at behavior. What one person interprets as reckless, another may not. It's a particularly subjective standard for the pipeline industry, as operators' goal is 0 incidents, and understanding and managing that level of risk is their day-to-day work. PHMSA's safety program requires operators to make risk-based decisions and prioritize higher relative risk over lower risks. And I think criminalizing the awareness of risk facing pipelines could chill pipeline safety efforts on risk prioritization, reduction, and accident prevention. So again, I think that at this point, what we're doing is positive. Reckless, as I said, is very subjective, and so I would have to oppose the amendment. Any other members wish to be heard? Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I Appreciate your comments on this amendment. Do urge folks to support it. However, in his oral and written testimony before the committee in February, Carl Weimer from the Pipeline Safety Trust, which is headquartered in my district, cited pipeline incidents in which the actions of a pipeline operator were so reckless that they would be considered criminal. He referenced the creation of the trust itself as having resulted from one of those instances where an operator's actions were so reckless that criminal penalties were warranted. Now, while the vast majority of pipelines are in fact operated safely, we've come a long way since the Bellingham explosions in 1999. We do need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to achieve the highest level of safety possible. This provision only holds a person liable when their conduct is reckless, meaning they act with deliberate indifference or conscious disregard. And I would ask the committee to support this amendment, and with that, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. With that, Mrs. Napolitano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the Hahn amendment regarding criminal penalty. I thank her for introducing this amendment in partnership with a colleague, Congresswoman Jackie Spear. Representative Spear introduced this provision as in a bill in the House, H.R. 4971, to streamline the criminal liability standard for pipeline incidents with the same standard that exists for hazardous materials incident. Rep. Spear's district, unfortunately, the location of a major pipeline explosion in San Bruno that claimed 8 lives, many injuries, and destroyed homes. For hazardous material incidents, Congress in Safety TLU determined that the criminal liability exists if a person knowingly and willfully or recklessly violates the law. The standard was set to ensure that justice is served to persons who recklessly neglect safety. For pipeline incidents, the current criminal liability standard is much harder to prove because there is no consideration for reckless behavior. The Hahn amendment tightens the criminal liability standards for pipeline explosions and makes it the same as the standard that currently exists for hazardous material. The Hahn amendment simply adds, I repeat, it adds the criminal standard of reckless to the current standard of knowingly and willfully damaging or destroying pipelines. I thank the Congresswoman Hahn and my colleague, Congresswoman Spear, for the work on the issue, and I do request that we support this amendment. I yield back.
Thank you, gentlelady. Any other members wish to be heard? Seeing none other amendments to the amendment? Seeing none, if not, the question is on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. Nay.